right, hi everybody. We're going to do notes for our second section of grammar for this last full chapter. This is one of the easier ones that we're going to do. So hopefully you have your notebook out and you are taking notes just like you would in class. So what we're going to talk about today are nosotros commands. So we'll go ahead and put that on here as our title. Okay. Now, we know a couple things about commands just to kind of get us warmed up and just refresh our memory on commands. We have affirmative commands. Okay. And we have negative commands. Now, if we're giving someone an affirmative command, we're saying, we're telling somebody what to do. If we're giving somebody a negative command, we're saying what not to do, right? Okay. So, nosotros commands is a little weird because it seems weird that we would give ourselves a command, telling ourselves to do something. But what we're actually going to use nosotros commands for is to say this phrase, let's blank, or let's not blank. Okay? So we're giving ourselves that suggestion. All right, we're saying, let's swim today after school. Let's eat at my favorite restaurant. Okay. Now, in order to form a nosotros command, okay, it's going to be real simple. What you're going to do, okay, and let's actually put a little subtitle here. To form nosotros commands. Okay. So all we're going to do is we use the present subjunctive nosotros form of the verb. Okay, that's all we have to do. So we already know at this point how to conjugate into the present subjunctive. So we're just going to use that nosotros present subjunctive form of the verb. So just as a reminder, AR verbs will have an hemos ending, and ER and IR verbs will have an amos ending. Right? It's those opposite endings for the subjunctive. Okay? Now, if we want to make the action negative, okay, we will, just like any other time, put the word no in front of the verb. Okay? So what we're going to do, and remember, you can always pause this so you can catch up on the notes and then hit play as soon as you're ready. I'm going to go ahead and scroll up. I want to give us a couple of examples on this. Okay? So, if I wanted to say, let's speak in Spanish. Okay? This whole thing is going to be the nosotros command. So what we're not doing okay, is we are not translating let's. Okay? All we're going to do is we're going to conjugate speak in the nosotros command. So we know that the verb to speak is hablar. So I can go ahead and I can put my stem, right? Normally it's an AR ending. So for AR verbs, I'm going to put hemos as my ending. Hablemos en español. Okay? Now, let's say that we were in a room full of people and some of them didn't speak Spanish and we wanted to make sure everybody understood us. And we could say, oh, let's not speak Spanish. Okay, so let's try that one. Let's not speak in Spanish. Okay, again, we are not going to translate let's. Okay, but what we do have to remember is that we need to say not speak. So in order to get not in there, we're going to have to use the word no in front of the verb. So I simply put no, and then I go ahead and I just do my verb the same way. Hablemos en español. Okay? It's really that simple. Okay, I'm going to draw a line. What I want you guys to know is that there are two ways to say the phrase let's and do an action. So let's go ahead and make a little note here. Okay, there are two ways to say let's with an action. Okay, and we'll just take a look at both of those ways. One of the ways is what we just talked about with the nosotros commands. The other way is going to be very familiar to you. So let's go ahead and we'll just draw an arrow over here and an arrow over here for our two ways, okay? So the first way that you can say let's with an action is use a nosotros command. So that's exactly what we did up above. Okay? The second way that you can say let's do something is by using the verb. We're going to use the simple future, and that's the verb ir. Now, just as a reminder, okay, is we're using ir, but then we have to use other things with it to do the simple future. So ir means to go, then we use a, and then we're going to use an infinitive verb, meaning an unconjugated and unchanged verb. Okay? Now the trick is, because we're saying let's, like let us, we need to make a note here. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to conjugate in the nosotros form of present tense. Okay? Not present subjunctive, but the regular present tense. So let's give ourselves an example of this so that we can see it. Okay? And here I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw a line down the two so that way we can see them on both sides. If I wanted to say, let's eat. Okay? So we'll put it on both sides so that we can see both ways to do it. Okay? Now, all we have to do is put the action of eat into the nosotros command for the first one, because as a reminder, we are not going to translate let's. Okay? So, I take the verb to eat, which is comer, I conjugate it in the nosotros command. So here's my stem, it's an ER verb, comer, so I'm going to add an amos ending, comamos. Then we can add other things on, like let's eat in the restaurant, in el restaurante, okay? Or you can add on whatever you'd like. If you want to do this option over here using the simple future, okay, it says we need to conjugate ir for nosotros in the present tense. Okay, so ir conjugated for nosotros is vamos. We have to remember that we need a after that. And then we're going to leave the verb to eat in the infinitive form. So vamos a comer. Okay? So those are the two ways that you can do this, but you need to know both. Number one, you need to know the nosotros commands because that's what the practice activities are going to be about this week. But you want to know both so that you can switch back and forth and say it however you want to say it. And just be aware of both ways to do it. Okay? Now, one thing that I did want to bring up, okay, that's going to be a note in your practice activities. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to look at is we're going to look at the phrase, let's go. Okay. I want us to make a note that for this affirmative nosotros command, we will use the present tense of ir, which is vamos. Okay, we will not, I'll make that nice and big, use the present subjunctive. Okay, that's a little different. This is one occasion where we're going to do this. So if I wanted to say, let's go to the bank. Okay, let me bring this up just a little so I have some more room. All right, so we're going to use the example. Let's go to the bank. Okay. For this right here, all right, we're simply going to use vamos. To say let's go, it's always going to be vamos. Okay? Now to do the rest of it, to say to, we say a. The bank is el banco. Remember that a and el are going to combine into al banco. Okay? However, this is where we need to make sure that we make a note. Okay? Let me fix that L for you. Okay, so let's not go. You will use the present subjunctive for this negative command. So it's only when you're saying to your friends like let's go in the affirmative, like we want to do it, that you're going to use vamos. If you're saying let's not go to the bank, we're going to need to come back and use that present subjunctive nosotros conjugation. So let's try the same example. All right, but we're going to make it negative. Let's not go to the bank. Okay, so if we're looking up here, all right, we used vamos in the affirmative, but we cannot use that for the negative. Remember that to make an action negative, we have to use the word no in front of the verb. So to say not, we're going to say no. And then if we remember back, okay, ir is one of those verbs that is irregular in the present subjunctive. Okay, so if we're doing the nosotros, it's going to be vayamos. All right, and then the rest is going to be the same. Al banco. But see, we used the present tense here for the affirmative, and we used the present subjunctive here because it was negative. Okay? Now, two more just quick notes that you're going to see in the activity, so you need to have these notes, so make sure you're writing these down. All right? Let me scroll actually all the way to the next page. Here we go. All right, we'll put a little line in here so that we know where we stopped. Okay. Okay. So another quick note, and we're getting towards the end, is we're just going to title this section, okay, using pronouns with commands. Because we've seen this before. We're just now talking about it with nosotros commands. But the same rule applied when we did to commands, usted commands, ustedes commands, now with nosotros commands, okay? So we're going to look at what the book says, and then we're going to write the notes in our own words. So if we look at the first one, it says object pronouns are always attached to affirmative nosotros commands. We talked about this in class, right? We're going to take whatever pronoun and we're just going to Velcro it to the end of the verb, okay? So let's write that down in our own words. So object pronouns, remember there's indirect and direct object pronouns. So object pronouns, okay, will always be attached to the end of affirmative nosotros commands. And it's really any command, right? Since we're talking about nosotros commands, we'll go ahead and put that in there. All right. Okay. So let's take a look at this, all right, just to make sure that we have this, okay? If we look here, it says, let's sign the check, okay? The thing that we're talking about is the check. Let's sign it. Let's say we already know I'm talking about the check. Then we can use lo in its place, which translates as it. Let's sign it. Okay? If we look at the other example, okay, it says, let's write to Anna and Raul. All right, and so we're talking about to Anna and Raul. So if we already know we're talking about them, we can say, let's write them, is what is going to translate there. Okay. Now, one thing I do want you to notice, and we'll put this in a different color, is it says a written accent, okay, is added to maintain the original stress. Remember that we talked about this with other verbs, that if we're not sure where to put the accent mark, we're going to look for the vowels. So, for instance, I'm going to do, here I'll do blue. When we're looking where we have it here, okay, and here, we're going to look from the end of the verb where we've attached the pronoun, and we're going to count 3 vowels back. So we have 1, 2, 3, accent goes on that one. Okay? Same thing's going to happen here. I'm going to put the dots right above it. So from the back of the verb with the pronoun attached, we've got 1, 2, 3. So we put the accent on the A. Okay? So that's just a reminder of a quick trick on how to do that. Okay. The very last thing, okay, is, oh, not the last thing. Just kidding. We didn't talk about the negative. Okay. So we've got here, all right, in this one, okay, tells us what to do with the negative commands. So let's just rewrite this in our own words. It says, object pronouns are placed in front of negative nosotros commands. Okay, that doesn't tell the whole story, though. So we're going to write this in our own words. Object pronouns are placed between no, that's important, right? It's a negative command, so we're going to have no and the nosotros command. Oop. Okay. It's going to go right in between. Okay. So if we look at this example right here, we've got our pronoun here, and we've got no, and we've got the nosotros command. Okay. Here we've got two pronouns, which we'll talk about in a second, and we've got no here, and we've got our nosotros command there. Okay. So that's the same as any other command, just like with the affirmative. We've seen it before, so hopefully this wasn't a surprise, just more just a refresher. Now, what I do want to remind you of is in the second example for the negative, okay? And actually, let's add this on. So object pronouns are placed between no and the nosotros command. Let's add in an arrow right here and the negative nosotros command. There we go. That makes it just a little bit clearer. Okay. One thing I want to remind you of, okay, we'll put it over here, is if you've got multiple object pronouns or reflexive pronouns, right? If you've got multiples that you're working with, just like in this second example up here, let me highlight it blue, okay? And then we'll just bring an arrow down to here so you can see what this is about. We're going to use rid. Rid tells us the order that they go in. So the R is reflexive. I is indirect. And the D is direct. And that's the order that you'll put them in. Okay? That's just a refresher from class of what we talked about. All right, now it's time for the last thing. Let me scroll this up. Okay. Draw a line. All right, let me add in one last picture. Okay. This says in your book on page 176, it just says, when nos or se are attached to an affirmative nosotros command. Okay, now this is specifically for nosotros commands. The final S is dropped from the verb ending. Okay, so this is just a minor note. We want to put it in our own words though. So this right here, okay, all right, so we're going to say when nos or se, okay, is used with an affirmative nosotros, and we definitely have to put that because it's specific to this, nosotros command, we will drop the S on the end of the command. Okay? So I want you to see what it looks like. So we're actually, we're just going to look at the ones that are here. Let's go ahead and look at this one, okay? So the verb sentar, okay, sentarse, is to sit. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got our verb and we've got a pronoun here. Okay, now if we wanted to put sentar into the nosotros command form, we would go ahead and we're going to put the stem, okay? We don't need to worry about anything else because when we're looking at the nosotros form, there's no stem changing, okay, for an AR verb in the present subjunctive. So we have that as our stem. Then we put our ending, which is going to be hemos, okay? So here's my verb conjugated in the nosotros command form. We use hemos because it's an AR verb. Now, we need to take care of the reflexive. So if we're doing a nosotros command, we need to use the nosotros reflexive pronoun, which would be nos. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this verb and we're going to drop the S off the end. Then what we're going to do is we're going to attach the nosotros reflexive pronoun onto the end of it. We're going to Velcro that on once we've dropped the S. So we get nos. Okay? And then, to be absolutely correct, we're going to do our accent, and we're going to start from the back, and we're going to count 1, 2, 3. And we put the accent there. Okay? So if we go back up and we look at our example, we ended up with the correct conjugation of it. Okay? Now, that'll be on some of the harder ones inside the activity, so you definitely want to make sure you're writing this down. All right, and you can refer back to it. You can always come back to this video, but it's so much easier if you just have it in your notes. That way you can have your notes out as you're doing the activities. Okay, now we need to look at this very bottom part of this picture I just put in, so I'm going to re-input the picture. Okay, so now we've talked about that. One more thing I want you to notice is going to be this part right here. Okay? So, if we want to do irse, okay, notice that we've got that pronoun there. What we're going to do is we're simply going to use vámonos, vámonos, which you've probably heard a million times, okay? And that's going to be our affirmative. Okay? If we want to say the negative form of it, okay, then remember we have to switch this up. We are no longer going to attach the pronoun to the end like we did here with nos, okay? we're going to have to put no first. Oop, I'm sorry about that. Okay. So we're going to have to put no. Okay. Then we're going to put the nos in between no and the verb. And then we use the present subjunctive of ir. No nos vayamos. And that's going to be your negative. Okay, command. Now again, those are very specific things, but some of the activities are going to ask you to do that. So if you're questioning why you're getting something wrong, I want you to come back and look at these notes and see if maybe one of these things was the issue. Okay? Now remember, as you're working on activities, you can always email me. You can save an activity that you're having difficulty with and wait until one of our online help sessions come in and I can do the activity with you. All right? If you need to email me, just as a reminder, okay, here is my email. So it's cstraka@heartdistrict.org. If you are not one of my students, I know that your teachers would be happy to help you. You can always email me as well. But I'm sure your teachers have times for you to come in and ask questions and get some help. All right, hopefully this was helpful. Make sure you use these notes as you're working on the activities.